She ruined me. It wasn't even my kid. This was a rough read, man. This was a rough read. Imagine a girl cheating on you, getting pregnant, and you raising it as your own. And instead of owning it, instead of at least coming clean on it, she decides to not only lie to you, but then she decides to use the kid against you to make you feel bad and to try to goad you into being the kid's father. Now, you'll realize some of these stories I'm doing don't have thumbnails. I try to find, good-looking girls that would probably do this to this guy. That's who I put on my thumbnails. Okay, this is from True Off My Chest, and it's an old Reddit post. It's got very small writing, so old man Joker is going to put on his glasses for this. It's tough. It's kind of like Clark Kent. I can be smart or I can be sexy. Unfortunately, this is like taking me from stupid to slightly above stupid, and then this is taking me from dumpster trash to, yeah, he's not very good looking. It's not much of an improvement in either way. All right. From True Off My Chest. And this is the title is They're Not My Kids and Not My Problem. About a month ago, I found out both of my children were the results of my soon-to-be ex-wife's affair. I've had a feeling for a while now that both of them were not mine. 6 years ago when my son was born, I was the happiest and I had been in my entire life, or I was the happiest I had been in my entire life. I had married my best friend. We had a child together and everything seemed amazing. A lot of people say, oh, it was my best friend, we got along, they were wonderful. I didn't see a problem in the world. Again, if you can't trust that person, who can you trust nowadays? That was until he started getting older. After a few years, I started to have my doubts that he was actually mine. He did not look like my child. The more he started to grow, the more I realized just how different he looked compared to what I would expect a child of mine to look like. I'm not a petty or paranoid enough person to let that alone drive me. It was my of a wife that really set my alarm off. Whenever she went out where she said whenever she went out, she never went where she said she did. She would have huge holes in her schedule she could never explain to me. She would refuse to allow me to interact with anyone from her workplace, and a close friend of hers accused her of flirting with her significant other at the time. It did not help that soon after our son was born, her lies started to catch up with her. Still, though, I loved her like the fool I was. She told me up and down how much she loved me whenever one of her lies caught up with her. She had convinced me that despite the fact that she was a lying and manipulative woman, that she wasn't a lying and manipulating garden tool. I'm going to substitute the word that I had to bleep for garden tool. He said last year she got pregnant again. Now, let me pause there for a second, okay? So a lot of lies, a lot of problems, and the son was born, but he was still catching her in lies. And she was still manipulating with him. And, a lot of people say, oh, red flag. Like a lot of us guys in this community will be like, oh, red flag, man. You should have right then go for the paternity test. And you should have done it right then. Look, man, I've dated a woman that cheated on me. And when it's somebody that you loved or cared about very deeply, maybe it wasn't even love. But when it's someone you care about deeply and you're friends and there's someone that has your trust and that is pulled away from you, you err on the side of maybe I'm crazy. Like maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I'm being weird. Like I guess I'm just insecure. Like, I know because I felt those things. I kind of wanted hard proof because otherwise it's like, am I paranoid or is this a real thing? I started digging. I found out the truth. But what if you don't find out the truth? What if there's like no tangible evidence? You do go through this phase where you're like, I'm crazy. What is going? Like there's something just wrong. There's that little butterfly feeling in your stomach, and it's not a butterfly. It's a vampire bat that it feels like a train drove through the center of you. That's what he was probably going through, honestly. Because again, we're aware of this stuff now, but when you're first kind of entering, that's why you get the red pill rage, because you never saw it coming. You were a blue or a purple pilled guy, and you're like, oh my gosh, I was, where did this come from? And then all of a sudden you realize the world's not the way you've seen it. That's why the Matrix Revolutions thing with the red and blue, because that's when you're like, oh, I took it and the world just, like, nothing is real. So remember, a lot of times when you hear people like this and you want to make fun of them, remember that, you know, they hadn't taken the red pill yet. They still lived in the blue pill world. Now he's taking the red pill. He got that as a suppository, right up the tailpipe. He says, last year she got pregnant again, and I still held out a small bit of hope that it was mine. But when her daughter was born, it was obvious she was mixed race. I refused to sign the birth certificate, and the paternity test I demanded afterwards proved my suspicions right along. Neither one of them are mine. I'll read through the next paragraph, and then I'll talk about it here. For the next day, or the day I got these results were the day I filed for divorce from that garden tool and walked away from the family I had created. Let me pause there for a second. Here's where his problem lies. And so much so, he didn't even get it right here. He said, I walked away from the family I had created. That's the way that he viewed it, is I made a family. I have a wife. I have children. I have my kids. I've created a family. That's one of the best, women are mothers, and they say, I've created a life. That's huge for women. Well, for men, it's the next step up. For men, it is, this is all because of me. The wife is happy, secure, financially stable, and doing well because of my hard work and my sacrifices. And my kids, not only are they my DNA, but they're going to be smart and well-educated and have the best life I can give them because of my sacrifices. And men get some pride out of that. Men can look and say, this is my creation. That was taken away from him instantly. The best friend and the woman that he counted on and was a partner in his life, gone. She gave the most special gift she could give to anybody to somebody else. Gone. The 2 kids that were his, they're not his after all. The newborn, that's easier but the 6-year-old, that's tough. That's tough. And I don't know, I don't have kids. So it's hard for me to say what I would do in this circumstance. But this guy made a decision, and I can understand it. And he got a lot of heat about his decision, but we'll talk about that in a second. He said, the day I got those test results was the day I filed for divorce from that garden tool. He uses that word a lot, by the way, because he's really upset at her, you can tell. And I walked away from the family I had created. I knew that it would destroy her son's life to see me walk out. You can see his mindset already changed because he didn't say my son. He said her sons, because it wasn't his son. Despite my concerns, I was the best dad I could be to him. I loved him with all my heart and put in 110% into being the father he deserved. Now, though, when I see him, I am filled with disgust. Disgust of my garden tool of a wife, disgust with myself for not trusting my instincts, and disgust that the last 6 years of my life have been for nothing. I have been told by multiple people now that I am a monster for leaving my son like this. My ex has tried on multiple occasions since I moved out to use him to guilt me into getting back with her. She will have him call me at random hours of the night crying and begging for his daddy to come back. The day I moved out, she paraded him into the room as I packed my things to show me how much damage I'm doing to him. In every conversation that he has brought up, both online and off, I am berated and shamed. That despite the fact that I am not the boy's biological father. I am his dad. Reading stuff like this, I see so many stories of these that I probably would have teared up a couple years ago reading something like this. It still really emotionally impacts me because I remember a lot of the times that I went through pain and how horrible I felt after a relationship. But I never had children that I loved involved. I never had anything to this degree. The angst and the frustration and the pain and the manipulation she tried on him. Can you imagine raising a son as if it's your own for 6 years and loving him and being a good dad to him, and then all of a sudden finding out he's not your DNA. And it's very easy, I think, for me and others maybe in my situation to say, like, I'm adopted. So my parents are not my real parents. But they like to say, hey, you know what? We chose you. Like, we went shopping for you. We went to an adoption agency, and we specifically picked you. So they viewed me as a gift. That helps a lot, because otherwise it'd be very easy to feel like an abandoned child. But what happens when that child becomes something that is a reminder of your wife's infidelity? And you may love the kid, but maybe you also are really, it brings up so many bad memories in regards to her that you can't get over that. It's tough. I mean, I can see both sides. I could see where somebody says, you know what, but it's not the boy's fault. And he even says, and I'm not trying to short him, he even says in the next coming paragraph, he said, my feelings of all this problem aren't at him, but it's a horrible situation. And I just can't, like, I'm not okay with this. And I can see both sides. I can see somebody saying, no, man, you still need to be in that kid's life. It's not his fault, and he deserves a good dad like you. I see that point. I also see the other half where it's like, I can understand him feeling so betrayed, and that the real dad should step up and be in his life. And this is the mother's fault for the son's unhappiness. Now, that doesn't help the kid any. I see both sides of it, and I'm really torn about it. That's why I thought this would be a good one for us to maybe look at and talk about. He said, what I have sadly now realized is that, to most, my own feelings mean nothing. My parents are my only supporters through all this, with my own siblings calling me a despicable person for abandoning a child like that. My feelings of betrayal and sadness mean nothing, because a child is involved. I know it's not his fault. I know that the man he calls his father for his entire life just walked away. But why am I expected to man up? Why should I have to pretend everything is fine and I do not feel contempt for this entire situation? Why should I put my own life and feelings aside? I never was the boy's father. I loved him like one, and honestly still do. But I would come to hate and contempt him if I had to play that role. I hate myself for not standing up and taking my own life back into my own hands. He's not my child, and even though it's not his fault, he's not my problem anymore. I got to say, this is a tough situation. But here's the important thing. No matter which way the guy chooses, it is his life, and he's the one that's living that problem. And it's up to him to decide the right way. I can't tell him what's the right, wrong thing to do. But what's interesting is the blame is coming on him for not sticking around. The blame is on him for not manning up and being a father to the kid. I notice there's very little blame from everybody else about her causing the problem, about her infidelity, about her lying to him, about her lying to the child. And this is what happens in these situations that makes me so angry. Women, I will never know what it's like to be a woman and have the snuggle struggle. A guy force himself onto her, have his way with her, she ends up getting pregnant. And then she has to either decide to keep or get rid of the kid. I'll never know what that's like. But I do know one thing. If she decides to keep it, she knows it's half hers. She knows that it's still her biological child. For a man to believe that he has created his own offspring, his own son, his own family, and then find out all of it is a lie, all of it, every bit of it, I can see why men would delete themselves and take themselves out. I can understand it. But it's interesting that the blame is going more towards him and not towards her. And that's, again, another problem with everything that's going on. He said, edit, wow, this post certainly blew up. Guess airing my dirty laundry accomplished something. Anyway, I've seen a few common questions, so I'll just answer them here. He said, number one, her son knows the truth of why I left. I sat down and told him that I am not his father and that his mother lied to me and cheated on me. And the kid's 6, 7, something around there. So he probably can understand. He said, I made it clear that I'm not mad at him, that it is not his fault for this happening, and no matter what, I still think he's an amazing kid. Number 2, some are saying that I never loved him or was always looking for a way out. It's hard to convey emotions in a text post like this, and even harder to allow vitriolic hatred towards your garden tool of a wife decontextualize the last 6 years of your life. You can't believe what you went through. Yeah, exactly. You don't judge a man unless you walk a mile in his shoes, as they say. He says, I have a lawyer, and I'm not going to be paying child support or alimony. So at least he got out of that debt-free. Last, though, for those who say I should stay in her son's life and be his father, that's not realistically possible. I do not hate him, but I have been cheated on, lied to, and used by a vile, self-centered garden tool who has now caught her children up in her lies and deceit. He is a casualty of her actions and blameless. He is a casualty of her actions and blameless. However, it can never change the fact of the harsh reality we find ourselves in. I don't hate him. I feel so sad when I think about how he feels. But all I see when I look at him is 6 years of my life I was lied to. 6 years of my life I was used. And 6 long years of built-up doubts and frustrations with a woman who used me. There's no putting aside my hatred to try and be in his life, because the life I lived with him was nothing more than a facade cultivated by his mother. This is the harsh reality I find myself dealing with, and I simply cannot in good faith put myself or him through that anymore. Something I think is interesting here, and a good side note, he's going through what we call the red pill rage. His entire life. Well, not his entire life, but, well, maybe his entire life. You know, when you're a younger man and you're told, like I was told by my father, who I love very much and blame none of this on him because he grew up in a different time. But for those of us that are 40, 50, 60 and younger, you know, he was 86, 87, we were told if you grow up and you have a good job and you're successful and you're a kind man and you're a loving man and you meet the right woman and you marry her and you have a family and you buy a house on the hill, life is good. Then you retire and off into the sunset. And many of us believe that because we grew up. I mean, by the time the internet came around, I think I was like 30-something maybe. I don't remember exactly. Now, I take that back. But until social media and the way you could interact with everybody the way you do, that wasn't that long ago. And that's when things changed. And so I feel like what my father told me was wrong. I don't feel like he was lying to me, but I feel like that life is a lie. And then when you get married and you have kids and you think your life is going one direction, which is I have my family, I have a wife, I'm heading towards retirement, I'm working hard, we're going to be successful, my kids will go to college, I'll retire with the wife and we'll move to Hawaii or Florida or whatever. Golden years with my best friend and the woman I love the most in the world. Bang. Over. All of it. Done. That is a death of a man's soul. And he's going through that rage right now. Now, maybe someday he changes his mind. I doubt it. Because, again, it's not that she's taking his kids away from him and he wishes he could be part of their lives, but he's not being allowed to. These are not his kids. And I cannot tell you the gut-wrenching. I mean, I don't even know myself, but I try to remember what I felt like in my worst periods of life, and this guy went through even worse. He says, edit number 2. Since I'm seeing many armchair lawyers in the comments saying this post is fake on grounds of what I said before, I will not reveal what state I live in, but I'm currently going through a fun legal process called disestablishment of paternity. Won't shut up 90% of you who think Google makes you a lawyer, but at least I tried. He says, edit 3. This is going to be my last edit before I move on from this small little distraction I created for myself. First, I want to thank everyone for the kind words to me in the comments, DMs, and the chat. You've given me a bright day for the first time in a while. I wish I could reply to all of you, but I cannot thank you enough. Secondly, I've noticed many people criticizing the word I used very profusely to describe my soon-to-be ex. In other words, the garden tool. I see nothing but white hot rage, I missed a sentence. He said, I want to just say the place I'm in now is one of the darkest I've been in my life. I see nothing but white hot rage for the woman who ruined my life. Is what I said inappropriate? Is the word I used to describe her dehumanizing and vile? Yes, I will admit that, but I won't apologize for it. What I wrote here today was the truth of the world as I see it, or as it is for me right now. It is the raw, unadulterated stream of consciousness for a flawed man. I do not intend to try and get people to hate women or push some misogynistic message about how women are terrible. That is not my goal here, and that is not the message of this post. I understand why people do not like the word I used here, and you know what I accept that as a valid criticism of what I did here today. I came here today to simply find some outlet for the situation I find myself in, to rant, to mourn, and to deal with the complex and raw emotions that have torn through me for the last month. A place where I can freely speak my mind, and you know what? I did that. Today was pretty all right, thanks to you guys. And again, to anyone who showed me love and support, thank you from the bottom of my heart. To those who came here disagreeing with me but showed respect, thank you. And to shame, and after the shame and ridicule I face in my real life, the respect you showed me despite your disagreement was nice. So long, and thanks for all the fish. I think that was a very well-written post, and I understand what it's like to vent. I can understand that frustration. And people calling him out for calling his ex a garden tool and all these other things. Look, the pain that he's going through, I can't even imagine. I've read stories and emails and posts over on Locals where you guys are, where somebody will post like, hey, man, I found out my girlfriend did this today, or sounds like my ex, she did this to me. This guy just lost his entire world in the matter of a fraction of a second. Can you imagine getting that documentation back from the paternity test and you open it and you're like, bang, right there, life ended. Life ended. Everything, your dreams and hopes and everything else dashed. So I thought you guys would be interested in hearing this. Again, it's no way, shape, and form to say this is all or several or whatever. But again, I'm still pushing for mandatory paternity tests. And if you guys get in a relationship and you do want kids someday, when things are good and things are healthy, say to her, hey, just so you know, this has nothing to do with you, but a friend of mine said, or I've seen multiple instances when, and just so you know, if we do have a kid, I will be requesting a paternity test, and that is just for my own edification. And if she says, how dare you?
How dare you?
She says, how dare you, and I don't want to be with you because of that? Okay, bye. But you got to watch out because, my God, having the carpet pulled out from underneath you like this is just heartbreaking. Guys, if you'd like to do dating profiles of the day and other silly stuff that I do, that's not on YouTube. That's over on Rumble and betterbachelor.locals.com. Go over there for the fun stuff because Big Mama YouTube doesn't let me doing that anymore.